We're continuing today our sermon series in Isaiah 61, and we're going to look just at one verse, Isaiah 61, verse 10. And it's on page 750 of the blue Bibles, which will be in the seats around you if you want to have a look, but it's also going to come up on the screens. So Isaiah writes, "I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God. For he has clothed me with garments of salvation and arrayed me in a robe of his righteousness. As a bridegroom adorns his head like a priest, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels." I want to talk today about how to find your gratitude and increase your joy. Everyone is looking for joy. One of the things almost all human beings share in common is this kind of search for joy. And I think it'd be rare if you went out on the street now and you asked a number of people around London, you said, would you like a little bit more joy in your life? I don't think many people would say, no, I'm fine. Just happy as I am, just get out of my way. I think most people would say, actually, yeah, I would quite like a little bit more joy in my life. But what distinguishes us, what distinguishes people is where we look for joy, what we imagine when we think of joy, and how we handle this desire for joy. So one option is to say, well, look, I kind of want more joy, and the way to get more joy is to improve my circumstances. If I could just change this, and if I could just change that, then I'd find more joy. So it might be finding a better job, or getting a promotion, or increasing your income, or finding the perfect home that you've always dreamt of, or finding the perfect partner, who ticks all the boxes. Or some of you might already have found that person. And or kind of getting into the right social network that you've always felt you deserve to be in. Or it might be getting rid of something. You might think, if I could just remove that person from my life, if I could just get out of that project at work, if I could just get away from that colleague, if I could just get past this challenge, then I would be joyful. And they might all be good things, good changes, but the problem is, what if they never happen? Do I want my joy to be so vulnerable to the ups and downs of life? And what if they do happen? I do get that change in circumstances, and it isn't all I thought it might be. So the second option is to say, well, I'm not going to try and improve my circumstances. I'm going to lower my expectations. I'm going to realize that life is just hard. You face heartaches, you face disappointments, you face tough calls, you face complicated relationships. People will let you down, you face disappointments. So the way to kind of see any joy is just to lower your expectations, to detach yourself from the ups and downs of life, to protect yourself from disappointment. And then perhaps once in a while, if you're lucky, something good will happen, it'll catch you by surprise, and you might feel a tiny bit of joy. That's another option. But the only difficulty is that doesn't sound very inspiring. And by detaching yourself so much from your circumstances, you kind of feel it's hard to get excited when something good does happen. So my question is, why do we long for joy? Why does everyone long for joy if it's so hard to find and so vulnerable to our circumstances? What if there's a way of finding and increasing your joy which is completely realistic and practical, and connects to our everyday circumstances, but isn't limited by them? And that's exactly what this passage speaks to. So the first thing we see in this passage is gratitude comes before joy. Isaiah writes, "I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God, for he has clothed me," because he has clothed me. I delight greatly. My soul rejoices. This is serious, next level joy. To be so happy you could burst, to have so much delight you want to rejoice. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I think I've probably tasted it a couple of times. One time in particular, I remember when I was longing to be a barrister, you have to do this kind of year-long job interview, and there are about 10 people vying for one place. And all through the year, you don't know if you're going to get a job or not. And you're desperate to kind of be the person who gets that job. And you work, you do all-nighters, you work really hard, you try and impress all the right people, you try and do really well on your performances in court, but you never really know how you're doing. Like, they're very good at kind of acting like black holes and not giving anything away. So the whole year you're basically running on on anxiety and adrenaline and just hoping that we'll be okay. And there are at least 3 occasions in that year where I was pretty sure I wouldn't just, not get taken on at the end of it, but that I would be marched to the door that day. Like, when you make a mistake, you just think, I can't believe I've done this. And then it came to the end of the year, and They have a meeting, all 50 of the barristers, private meeting, and you don't know what's happening, you don't know how it's going to go, and then you get a phone call. And I got this phone call, I can still remember, I was outside a pub just off Chancery Lane, just preparing myself for the worst. And the phone call came in, and they said, Stephen, we're delighted to tell you you've got a place. And the kind of relief and joy just surged up within me. And it was so exciting. And then I kind of called Beth quickly, and you have to go to this restaurant they've rented. You walk in, there's all 50 of these people you hugely admire. They kind of give you a round of applause and cheer. It's one of the best nights you could possibly imagine. I thought, this is all I need. I'm going to be joyful for the rest of my life. This is it. I'm going to be in a perpetual state of joy now. Nothing else needs to happen in my life. This is all I've ever wanted, and I've got it. But I thought I'd phone my family just to kind of help them share my joy. So I phoned up my mum, who I love, and I said, Mum, I've got this job as a criminal barrister. I'm really excited about it. And she said, I hope you're not going to be representing criminals. And I said, well, no, I have to represent people accused of crime. That's what criminal barristers do. And she goes, well, I don't want you to do that. And I said, no, I know, but they're not guilty until they're proven guilty. So all I'm doing is representing them. She said, so you might be representing people who've done really bad things. And I said, well, I can't exclude the possibility. Knowledge is a tricky thing. She said, well, I'm not happy about that at all, Stephen. Oh. So a little bit of my joy went, and then I thought I'll phone my brother, my little brother Paul, always been a great supporter of mine. I phoned him up and I said, Paul, it's great news. I've been given a job. I've been given a job and employed as a barrister. And he said, how much are they going to pay you? I said, oh, well, it's not actually like a salaried role. I don't actually get a salary. He's like, how are you going to study for all these years? They're not even going to pay you a salary. I was like, oh, well, it's not like that. I guess I'm kind of self-employed. He said, Steve, if you're self-employed, how can someone give you a job? That's basic law. I should be the barrister. So I kind of came off the phone like, oh, a little bit more of my joy gone. And then I got into the office, and I thought it's fine, I was still feeling quite optimistic, but then someone else was upset about something else and something went wrong. And by the end of the week, I was actually pretty irritated and frustrated. It just didn't last. It was all I'd ever hoped for, and it only kept me joyful for about a week. And then I look at Isaiah, and Isaiah is saying, I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God. And I kind of feel like saying, well, good for you, Isaiah. I'm sure you've got lots of great things in your life. Good of you to share it with us. But then you look at what actually is going on. Like, what are his circumstances? Look at the rest of the chapter. People are trying to restore a land which has been completely destroyed. People are captive. People are prisoners. People are living in darkness. They're trying to rebuild ruins. They're surrounded by ruins. He's surrounded by people who are facing shame and despair and disgrace. Now, he hopes that it will be restored, but his current circumstances are bleak. And it really bothers him. And yet, the tent shifts in the midst of all this. He says, I delight greatly. Not because of his immediate circumstances, but because of his understanding of who God is and what God has already done. He has great joy because God has clothed him. God's character is revealed through his actions, and he delights in God because he knows who God is, because he knows what God has done, and he's grateful for it. It's not his joy which makes him grateful, it's his gratitude which makes him joyful. His gratitude to God is the foundation of his joy in God. And I don't know about you, I tend to think, if you make this happen, God, if this thing goes well, then I'll be joyful, then I'll be grateful. So it's like a win-win. I get to be joyful, and then you get the benefit of my gratefulness. But actually, it's the other way round. I was reading a Benedictine monk who said, gratitude comes before joy. It's not joy that makes you grateful, but gratitude that makes you joyful. The root of joy is gratitude. And it's fascinating because this is actually supported by secular academic research. I read a paper this week by the Harvard Medical School, as you do. And many a Thursday night I'll be picking up that particular journal. And And it drew on 2 research papers. The first done by the University of Miami. And they had 3 different groups of people. And they were all asked to write just a few lines a day in a journal. The first group was asked to focus on what they were grateful for. The second group was asked to focus on what irritated them and annoyed them in their lives. And the third group weren't given any kind of suggestions at all. They were just said, just write about whatever. After only 3 weeks, the first group were more optimistic, they felt better about their lives, and they actually visited the doctors less. It's in a medical journal. The second study was the University of Pennsylvania. 411 people were asked to write and personally deliver a letter of gratitude to someone they had never properly thanked for their kindness. Those who did it immediately experienced a huge increase in happiness. It had an impact on their lives greater than any other psychological intervention, with benefits lasting for over a month. By writing a letter saying thank you. Gratitude comes before joy. And the conclusion, Harvard Medical School, they said, if you've got a faith, prayer can probably help to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. Harvard telling you to pray. I tell you, the Bible tells you to pray, you're like, meh. Harvard, you're like, oh, Harvard. It's not joy that makes us grateful, but gratitude that makes us joyful. And the way I kind of think about this is, I don't know how you kind of think about joy being expressed. I often think about it being expressed as like a giant ball. I don't know why that is. So this is joy. Here we are. And I don't know how you feel about, steady. I don't know how you feel about gratitude being expressed. Thank you so much. See, it's very vulnerable joy to the changing circumstances of life. So if you seek joy and you put all your weight on joy, it's always going to be inherently unstable. So you could say, well, no, I'll be grateful, but once I've got joy. So you kind of, all your hopes for gratitude are balancing. I feel like I've got everyone's attention in the room. Are balancing on your hopes for joy, and it's inherently unstable. It is unstable because you never quite know if the circumstances are going to be right for you to feel joy, and your gratitude is conditional on you feeling that joy. So it's very difficult. But if you say, no, I want to make gratitude the foundation, and I'm going to plant myself on that, because actually I can influence gratitude. I can't influence joy, but I can influence gratitude. So I'm going to determine to be grateful in all circumstances. Then you enable joy to well up within you, and it's got the firm foundation of gratitude. You see, gratitude is the foundation for joy in your life, not the other way round. Thank you very much. So gratitude comes before joy, but then also awareness comes before gratitude. And it's okay saying, okay, be grateful, but you might be thinking, how? Or what for? Like, what have I got to be grateful for? I don't know about you, but sometimes I just take things for granted. Someone once said you either take things with gratitude or you will take them for granted. And we have this kind of ritual in our house on a Saturday night. We don't always get it right, but we have like a family tea, 5 o'clock on a Saturday night, and we take it in turns to go around the table. And everyone has to say one thing they're grateful for. And then we keep going until basically tea is over, or one of our children has basically chuck their food over me, or whatever it is. But we just keep going round. And what we find is as we go around the table, each taking it in turns to say something that we're grateful for, joy kind of rises at the table, and we start to become aware of things we have to be grateful for that we hadn't even realized at first. And that's also true of our faith, perhaps most of all. Isaiah says, I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God, for he has clothed me with garments of salvation and arrayed me in a robe of his righteousness. As a bridegroom adorns his head like a priest, as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. The Lord has clothed us with garments of salvation and a robe of his righteousness. So why is that? Being clothed with garments of salvation, a robe of righteousness. Why is that a cause for gratitude? Well, I don't know about you, but one of the things that sometimes steals my joy is a disconnect between how things are and how we long them to be. So it might be our circumstances, my circumstances, but also it's myself. On any given day, I don't do the things I hope to do. I do things I don't want to do. I've got regrets over things that have happened. I've got regrets over things that I've done wrong to other people and to God. And I also have, anxieties about what might happen in the future. What if I fail there? What if I mess up there? And you can kind of start to take this stuff on. You can start to clothe yourself in things. Our failures, my hurts, my disappointments, my shame. And because of that, you can put up a front when you meet with people, which impairs your connection with them. In the old days, you would have to put on a mask almost to kind of hide a little bit of what's going on inside you. But these days, you just get a social media profile. And I really love social media. I love it. I enjoy it. It enables you to connect in all sorts of different ways. But there's this kind of temptation sometimes to filter our image, even to filter how others might perceive our lives, to project externally how we long to be perceived internally. And on social media, I don't know if you've noticed, everyone seems to be living their best life. But the reality is often a little bit more complicated than our highlights reel. And the more we use it, the more it can studies show, there's like a whole raft of studies on social media, it can kind of increase deconnection rather than reducing deconnection. So it makes it harder to connect, not easier. And people often feel, after using it, kind of lonely. And it's fascinating. As everyone is projecting out what they want their lives to look like, the risk is that there's greater disconnect between that kind of ideal and reality. So rather than feeling grateful, people actually feel quite a lot of ingratitude, dissatisfied and ungrateful, because you can compare your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reels, and you can easily forget what you've got to be thankful for. And it's so powerful, and this isn't like a 21st century phenomenon, it goes all the way back to like the Garden of Eden, in Sam's song, we sing all that we lost in the garden, and what we lost in the garden was because of our sin, because of our shame. We lost this wonderful, close, unhindered connection with God and with other people. And that loneliness we sometimes feel through social media is like taps into a cosmic loneliness. And Josh is going to help explain this, so Josh, why don't you come up? Amazing. So we can sometimes, without willing it, Josh, you just put this on. Sorry to get you dressed on stage. There you go. Brilliant. Hope that fits. We can start to put on all these things we're unhappy about in our lives. And there you are. It's personal design for you, Josh, but amazing. So it might be that we got a bit of fear, or a bit of regret, or a bit of shame, or a bit of failure, or a bit of comparison, all these other stuff. And the thing is, God sees us exactly as we are. Like with 20/20 vision. He's not blind to who we really are, no matter what kind of front we put up. But he doesn't just look at us in disgust and say, well, all that stuff's going on, I don't want to kind of get close to you. He actually comes close to us in grace. And this passage says he kind of covers us, he gives to us a garment of salvation. So there you go, Josh, so he kind of clothes us with salvation. And the amazing thing about that is he sees you exactly as you are. He knows you to the bottom of your soul. And yet he loves you to the sky. He kind of comes close to you. He doesn't pull your mask away and leave you humiliated and exposed. He takes those other things away and gives you garments of salvation. Jesus' greatest desire was to connect you with God, so there'd be nothing hindering you to God. But it doesn't end there. It's not only garments of salvation, it's also a robe of his righteousness. And what that means is like the honor of Jesus' righteousness, like his justice, his glory, all the things he's done which give him his authority and his honor, that he also gives those to you. So what does that look like? So imagine that Josh and I first met when I was working as a criminal barrister, and Josh was accused of importing 30 kilos of cocaine. You've never imported that much, have you, Josh? And Josh is guilty, so he has to plead, and he gets 15-year sentence, which is actually quite a good sentence in the circumstances. Josh, be very grateful to your barrister. And so I say, I'm so moved by what a remarkable judge Josh is. I think he's probably a victim of circumstances. I just want to enable him to live with freedom. That's what salvation means, freedom. I want to enable him to live with freedom. So I say to the judge, Judge, I'll do the 15 years. I'll go in. I'll do the sentence for him, okay? And you just free him. And somehow I managed to persuade the judge to say, okay, you can do the 15 years on Josh's behalf and Josh can go through. That's like me giving him a garment of salvation so that he is free afterwards. But then if I said, do you know what? Here I am with my, robe, my wig. If I said, well, do you know what? It's no good Josh just being free. He needs a job. He needs a purpose. He needs a life to lead with significance and honor and authority and respect so that he can establish himself in this community. So if I say, well, actually, I've spent a few years working. I've spent a number of years studying. I've got all this experience. It's been hard won, a lot of late nights. It's cost me a lot. But if I could transfer to Josh all the kind of honor and the authority and the respect and the status of my role, then I would be giving him a robe of my righteousness for him to wear. And maybe a wig? We up for that? And so Josh isn't just kind of clothed with a garment of salvation, he's arrayed in a robe of righteousness. And that's what Jesus does. Thank you so much, Josh. Jesus gives you a robe of his righteousness, and there is nothing better in the universe. No greater honor, no greater distinction, no greater status, nothing more costly, nothing more significant, nothing more admirable, no greater prize than having a robe of Jesus' righteousness. The honor he has through his faithful, selfless life, his costly sacrificial death, the beauty he has, he gives it to you with the care, the love, the concern, the precision that a bride or bridegroom might take preparing themselves for their wedding day. That's how he dresses you. Why? Because you're his prize. You're his treasured possession. You're his glory. You're the very thing he came to save, to win. And when the Father looks at you, he sees his much-loved child, his much-loved daughter, his much-loved son. And when you glimpse that, when you start to become aware of that, it kind of grows gratitude in you. Whether you're up and down, whether you're winning or losing, whatever battles you face, your ultimate status, your value, your purpose is secure and it's steady, it's unshakable. And as your gratitude grows, your joy increases. There's a guy called Ed in my Alpha group. A little while ago, and he was a very talented musician, and he had been he was an atheist and had been an atheist for years, and he married someone who had some kind of faith, and for years he said, he would give her quite a hard time about her faith and could sometimes be quite cruel to her because he just didn't understand it. It seemed crazy to him. And he actually came on Alpha, and on the third week he heard about Jesus dying on the cross, that the Son of God loves you and gave himself for you. And he kind of came into the small group and he tried to speak and his eyes just kind of filled with tears. And he could barely get his words out. And all he said was, if Jesus did that for me, I mean, if that's true, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I just want to thank him. Awareness comes before gratitude. Gratitude comes before joy. And it's not a joy that's limited by circumstances. It's founded on the eternal reality that the greatest battle you could ever face has been fought for you. That the greatest price you could ever have to pay has been paid for you. That the greatest honor you could ever desire has been given to you. You are clothed in salvation. You are arrayed in righteousness. You've been made different. And that changes things on Monday morning, in the office, on the tube, in your boardroom, with your colleagues, with your boss, because there's a confidence about your identity, which is different from those around you. And you can face the ups and the downs and be steady in the storm because you know your joy is founded in a different place. Your peace isn't there to be stolen. And your purpose is far greater than the changing tides of each given day. And when people say that, when they see it, they will realize you are blessed. And there's something different about you. And your joy is coming from a different place. In Jesus' name. Amen.